I think hybrid training is the future, and I'm not talking about high rocks. Now, when we talk about hybrid training, we're talking about someone who has multiple different training goals that they want to complete at once. Maybe that's something like squatting and rowing together, or maybe you're someone who wants to train like an NFL athlete in the off season, aka strength conditioning. Now, the term hybrid athlete or hybrid training has gotten a little bit of flack recently, specifically from people saying that you using the term athlete isn't right, but in reality, if someone cares about that, they're probably a loser. The term athletes just refers to someone who's pretty good at organized sporting events or physical exercise, and oftentimes they do an organized sporting event. So by that logic, we could simply do a park 5K and we can start calling ourselves athletes. It doesn't really matter. Now, it's undeniable that hybrid training has become more popular, and we believe it's one of the most enjoyable styles of training that most people can do. Now, for some people, chasing a specific goal like weightlifting, rugby, jiu-jitsu is the only thing you want to do. Nothing else will satisfy you, and you're willing to make large sacrifices to make that goal happen. And we love it. We're here for it, and we're here to support you as best as possible. I, for example, was someone who competed exclusively in weightlifting. I won nationals multiple times, and I represented Ireland on the international stage. But there's a large chunk of you out there who want to do a little bit more, and I will include myself in that bracket. You want to do a little bit more than strength training and a little bit more than conditioning. You want to do something that, dare I say, some might call becoming a bit more athletic. Just strength training doesn't hit the mark, and just cardio doesn't hit the mark by itself either. You want to do something that includes both of these in a bit more of a structured fashion. Now, naming things can be a bit more restrictive, or it can give us a lot of freedom, which is why I like the term hybrid, because it gives us an opportunity to decide on the goals that we actually want to do. Now, if we look at the demographics who are our clients, people who use the Sika Strength app, for example, it's a nice even split between weightlifters, strength trainees, and sport. And that sport is very evenly split between specific sports like rugby or jiu-jitsu, and the other half of that is very definitively athletes who describe themselves as either hybrid power or hybrid endurance. Now, one of the most popular programs ran by pretty much all those demographics at some point is the Becoming a Horse program. This is a program that mixes strength, power, big movements like a little bit of weightlifting, it includes jumping and sprinting, and it's something that a lot of people have taken a shine to over the last few years. Now, I believe CrossFit actually scratched that itch a couple of years ago for a lot of different people, but it didn't quite go far enough in scratching that itch. You could be good at weightlifting, you could be sort of good at strength training, you could be sort of good at running, but you never really got a chance to go deeper on that itch and get a tangible performance increase in one or more of these goals consistently and concurrently. That's where hybrid training came in, or at least the way we like to train hybrid. For example, Dara's hybrid goal and still is squatting 500 pounds and running a sub 5-minute mile on the same day. My own personal goal was to squat 300 kilos and get my blue belt in jiu-jitsu. Currently, it's something like have a bigger snatch, bigger squat, be a little leaner, and be pretty aerobically conditioned. Now, hybrid isn't, again, it's not CrossFit. It's very distinct goals organized in a way that supports them throughout the year in a meaningful fashion. It's not just pick all the goals, do them all at once. There's still structure to that training. You can't have it all, but you can have a lot of it when you structure that training in the right way. Take, for example, something like the squat and run, the 5 and 500, where someone tries to squat 227 kilos and run a 5-minute or less mile in the same day. Now, there's very few people who have actually achieved this so far. It's still in the single digits. And this is something that while you might look at these individually and think, okay, they're pretty impressive. A 5-minute mile is obviously a very fast mile. A 227 kilo squat is a very fast mile. And doing them individually is something that's possible for not most, but a reasonable chunk of the training population with the right genetics and the right training time. Now, the problem here is doing them together. So could a lot of people bulk up to 120 kilos and squat 227 kilos? Probably. Could a lot of people cut a lot of weight with enough running experience and get down to that 5-minute mile or pretty close to it? Absolutely. But the real key here is how do you organize them together while doing it concurrently? You see, the real problem for a lot of you is that you're not really realistic enough about the goals that you want to do. For example, a lot of you might want to run a 8-minute 5K and you want to squat 200 kilos around the same time. Maybe it's the same day or the same week, and you want to hold these abilities at the same time. Now, the problem here is sometimes when some of you are looking at this goal, you've never squatted 200 kilos, nor have you ever run a sub 22-minute 5K. And the issue with this is that you need to structure them in a realistic way so that when you actually want to be able to do it, you can do it in a meaningful way and not spend months and years spinning your wheels trying to do these both at the exact same time. Now, luckily for you, while these specific goals might be relatively new in the training sphere, the actual way you go about structuring this training is something that's decades old. It's actually just strength conditioning or periodization of training. Just like in periodization of strength conditioning, where someone does their off season and then does their sport, maybe a rugby player might focus on a bigger squat, and then in the pre-season they'll focus on more conditioning and maintaining that squat. So too do you need to treat your specific goals like an actual sport. You need to think about what would make most sense in the off season. Let's take that 200 kilo squat and that fast 5k. It probably makes most sense for more of you who are trying to hit something like that to get the bigger squat first in that off season, where you add the weight to your body weight, you add the weight to the barbell, and you try and make this as comfortable as possible. Maybe you even try to exceed that 200 kilos to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room once you inevitably come into your in season, which would be the second part of your training, where you would focus primarily on the running. Then you would try and maintain that squat as best as possible. And then lastly, just like in periodization or in a really sport specific event, at the tip of that spear, you would then try and peak that squat and that run at the same time. You certainly wouldn't try and spend the whole year trying to run the fastest 5k you can, peak your squat at the same time. This will absolutely get you nowhere. It's much more productive to treat yourself like an athlete and use these good principles of strength conditioning. Now, these principles apply regardless of what your current experience level with either of these abilities are. So let's say, for example, you're someone who's pretty adept at squatting, but you do want that much faster sprint time. But unfortunately, you've done all sprinting in the last 10 to 15 years. You would structure that training in the same way with that 200 kilo squat and that fast 5k. We would start with that bigger squat. Then we would try at the same time practice sprinting, getting used to that motion, slowly increasing the intensity using moderate volume, for example, on the sprinting, while we're absolutely smashing that squat. And then once that squat has peaked, shortly after, using the good principles of strength conditioning like we normally would, where we would peak our strength first before we try and get to a peak velocity, then so too would you try and peak your squat first before looking for your peak sprinting ability 2 to 3 weeks later. So remember, hybrid training isn't an excuse just to do whatever, whenever you want to do it. It still has to have reasonable training principles behind it if you want to make tangible performance increases on your specific goals. These can be diverse and they can be pretty at odds with each other, but it still needs to have smart training principles. Lastly, I think hybrid training is probably one of the best methods of training that will provide the best long-term performance and enjoyment while people age. So for a lot of you're an athlete who probably is retired a couple of years ago, and we see this quite frequently, where someone played a high level of sport 15, 20 years ago, and they want to get into some kind of training, but they're not really sure where they need to start. Hybrid offers us this great ability to actually start training like you did before, but in a bit more of a productive fashion, and probably not quite as egregious on your body. The hybrid training style offers a lot of benefits in the long run for health and wellness. For example, pushing maximal powerlifting or weightlifting or jiu-jitsu by itself probably going to lend itself to a lot of injuries. Now that might be worth it for your life, and in certain points, and I certainly think it is, but for a lot of people, this ability to increase your muscle mass, your strength, and your multiple areas of fitness and conditioning is going to be how you'll feel your best, look your best, while still pushing for performance. You don't have to just settle into the mundane, steady-state cardio and a little bit of resistance training to age well. It'll help for sure, but a lot of you want to get after it and a lot more aggressively. I think the future of hybrid training is something that's going to benefit a ton of people. It's going to stimulate you mentally and physically. Now, we have a ton of hybrid training programs on the Sika Strength app. There's something like Becoming a Horse. There's Squat and Sprint, which is coming in the next few weeks, which is, as the name says, something where you push your squat and your sprint in training. This is definitely something I enjoy doing myself. I love this style of hybrid training. For example, my top tier goal still is a weightlifting movement and strength training, but adding in some diverse goals around that is just better for overall health. It's enjoyable and to a certain degree doesn't quite compromise those goals. We've got a lot of different hybrid programs coming to the app, along with some very intense support when you use that app. If you want convenience paired with expertise, then the Sika Strength app is one of the best places you're going to find this. You pull out the Sika Strength app, you get your training program, it's ready for you. If you have an issue, you click on that coach feature in the top right hand corner and you'll directly message us on the Sika Strength team and we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can. So you're not just left with an app by itself. We're here to support you and coach you as best as possible, alongside a new feature coming the new year, which is video feedback. Now, if you'd like another hybrid training video, look at running and lifting together in more in-depth detail, check out this video here.